Happy Summerween! It is officially time. Today is the 2nd of July and I'm so excited to get started. Let's talk about what I'm planning on reading this week. There are 5 prompts for Summerween. The book-related ones are read a horror book, read a paranormal book, and read a book with Halloween colors on the cover. So I think I have one book that meets all of those challenges, and I don't mind doubling, tripling up on stuff, especially when I want to give myself room to read potentially more books that don't necessarily fit into those categories. So for all of those, I'm going to be reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, which I'm very excited about. It's a bit chunkier than I thought it was. I also have the audiobook and it's like 14 hours long, and then I'm trying to figure out what I can pair with it, just so I have 2 books going at once. I normally do that anyway, and I'm trying to come up with something that's different enough while still being thrillery. And I think I'm gonna read Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, because I assume this is mystery thriller, which is close enough for Summerween. Not necessarily horror, but I already got that prompt checked off. That's the plan right now, but I'll let you know if anything changes. Suddenly there are like 1,000 books that I want to read for Summerween, so it might be tough to narrow them down. The other prompts that are non-book related are read a book in the dark, so I'm definitely going to be doing that sometime this weekend. And then the final prompt is make a Halloween themed snack or drink. And so I found a ton of stuff that I want to make, but I will let you know once the time comes. I read like the first 3 pages of Southern Book Club last night, and I didn't realize that it's technically historical fiction. It's set in the 80s. I've noticed a trend now of regular fiction that is secretly historical fiction. And I'm not a big fan of historical fiction, but I don't know how much that's actually going to play into the story. That's the plan for this week. I guess we should get started.
Blackstone Publishing presents The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This book is read by Bonnie Turpin.
Welcome to my kitchen. I swear it looks messier on camera than it looks in real life. You'll just have to trust me. So I'm going to start making my first treat, which they are calling caramel apple crack, but which I like to refer to as Pizza Hut dessert pizza. I'll link the recipe in the description, so I'm going to make the one that they have, but I'm also going to make the other Pizza Hut dessert pizza, which is cherry. We're going by the seat of our pants on this one, but hopefully it turns out. Hopefully other people remember Pizza Hut lunch buffet pizza, and it's not just me, but I'm hopeful that it'll turn out. So let's get started. In terms of the book, I am 15% in, and I like it for the most part. The only thing is I think I'm gonna have to stop doing the audiobook because, first of all, I don't really love the narrator. I think it's the same narrator who did On the Come Up. That might just be me because I didn't like her either. But also we got a scary scene, and it just doesn't have the same impact when you're listening to it at 2.5 times speed. So I might have to switch. But I think it's good, and I like that the historical fiction setting does actually matter. You're following Patricia Campbell, who is getting ready to die. I forgot it opened like that. I assume she had cancer, but she doesn't. She was just a sad housewife. And already within the first 15%, we've jumped 3 years in the future. It's kind of wild. So already it's the 90s, so this historical fiction is all over the place. But it is set there for a reason. It's the height of the Satanic Panic, and she and all of her friends are Southern housewives, which does make sense. People are definitely still housewives now, I know that, but it's more the trope that it used to be. They're very stereotypical, and they're pretending that their book club where they read like true crime is actually a Bible study, which is very cute. And a lot of the true crime that they're reading I don't know about. They've mentioned Manson and Bundy, but there are quite a few others that I didn't really know about. So more content for me, I guess. I felt like I had read a Grady Hendrix before, but I actually don't think that I have. I think maybe I get him confused with Josh Mallerman, which, sorry, but I've only read one Josh Mallerman before and I didn't like it. So I think maybe I assumed that I wouldn't like Grady Hendrix, but so far so good. It's definitely, I feel like a bunch of people would probably pick it up and put it down if he hadn't put the author's note in the front that said, basically he wrote this as a tribute to his mom, where he wanted his mom to fight Dracula. And I feel like if he hadn't put it in there, maybe some people would have quit on the book before the actual scary stuff started happening. Probably also why it's titled Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. We are running low on brown sugar. Hopefully it's fine. You can't see what I'm doing, but just trust me, it's going really well. It looks great. Nothing to see here, just beauty and perfection. So I already screwed up. I was supposed to peel the apple first. Didn't do that. I have a second apple. We're just gonna go with it. If it's like 80% good, I'll make another one and peel it this time, I promise. Oh no, oh no. I mean, it's fine, everything's fine. It's going great. Caramel's just so easy and clean to work with. I love it. Good enough. So, this is what it looks like prior to going in the oven. You will see what happens in 22 to 25 minutes. You don't want to watch me do this all again, so I'm just going to grab my audiobook because, you know, it's booktube channel, and I'll let you know how these desserts turn out. So here's the apple one. As you can see, the caramel did its own thing, but it looks like it's cooked well. And then this is the cherry one. I'm gonna put a glaze on it so it'll look a little more appealing, but it looks like they both turned out pretty well. Without having eaten them, I'm gonna say I'm happy with them. I was wearing this yesterday, but don't worry about it. It's the next day. I am 31% into Southern Book Club, and it's good. It's slower than I was expecting and not really scary. I think I'm just more of a visual person when scary things affect me, because I got to the infamous rat scene and it was gross, but didn't affect me in the same way. But it's a new day and it's a beautiful day, and so I'm thinking about hammocking. I'm just watching the neighbors out there right now and they're chatty, so I'm gonna wait until they leave. And I was thinking I'm kind of in the mood for a switch up, and I had the radical idea to go totally rogue, and I grabbed Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which I know isn't thriller, horror, whatever, but if you didn't know what this was, this cover would be creepy, right? So I feel like that counts, and I think they're going to a pretty dark world in this one. In the description it says, a land filled with mad scientists and death and choices. That could be the description of a horror book easy. So I kind of want to just sit in the hammock and read this whole thing in one go. It's about 180 pages, but it's got huge font, like huge font. So I think it's possible, or I could at least get half of it. So that's my plan for today. I'm gonna read Southern Book Club until these people leave, and then I'm gonna go hammock. I forgot to say I tried the desserts I made last night. The apple, excellent. Definitely I would have gone easier on the caramel and harder on the cinnamon, but really good. The cherry one, not so much, which is too bad, but 1 out of 2 ain't bad. All right, so not quite one sitting, but I'm about 40 pages from the end here. I was hammocking, and then it got too hot, and then I showered, and I kept reading, and I'm loving this. It's so much fun. It meets the Summerween theme even more than I was expecting it to, and I love the writing in it. I was worried that this would have too much of a tone shift between like real world and fantasy world, and it does, but I love both tones. I haven't said what this is about. Down Among the Sticks and Bones is the second book in the Wayward Children series, the first one being Every Heart a Doorway, and so in this one, which I think you can read as a standalone. I know some people say you can't, but I think you can. It's about two sisters, Jack and Jill, who grow up with very strict parents, and then one day they find a magical door to another world, and they have an adventure. I'm just sad that it's almost over. This feels like something I could read another 200 pages about. And yes, I do have all the other books, but it's not the same. I'm really loving this. She's so good at the mix of literary with interesting plot. It's just excellent. I'll let you know how I feel once I finish it. Final thoughts on Down Among Sticks and Bones. I loved it. This is definitely 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much more than Every Heart a Doorway. Every Heart a Doorway, like, I get what it was going for, and I liked the atmosphere setting, but the actual plot I wasn't a huge fan of. This, every second of the plot I enjoyed. It's amazing too, considering Jack and Jill, the main characters, don't actually talk until like 40 pages in. That sounds like it shouldn't be a good book, but it's an incredible book. The thing about a book of this length is while I was reading it, I was so excited that like the pace was moving so fast and I was getting all of these interesting things, but at the end, as I finished it and loved it, I want it to be double the length. So I'm just greedy and I will never be happy, because there are so many things that we only touched on in here that I would have loved to have expanded on. Like their day-to-day lives. We just kind of skip over and skip to the big events. I would love to have more about Dr. Bleak and the Master. Like, there's so much to work with here that just this one book could be blown up into an entire series, but instead Miss McGuire has gone and expanded into other worlds, and I'm excited to read more of them, but also I just love this one so much. I'm so happy that I read this, and it fit the Summerween theme even more than I was expecting it to. If Every Heart a Doorway wasn't exactly what you were hoping, this one might be the one that you want. And there are like 4 more books that are already out, so I'm really excited to read more of these. I finished this not quite in one sitting, but in one day, so that's good enough. And it's nice to know that the next time I sort of have the mood to read a whole story in one day, these are excellent candidates. As for Southern Book Club, I barely read any yesterday. We did get some interesting stuff where we've now gone to the Black neighborhood in town, and there's some great commentary in there that I'm really enjoying, and just having the characters have to step outside of their comfort zones. It's all really well done. I'm getting a bit tired. I think it's too long, and I'm still sort of waiting for it to settle into what the story is gonna be. I like it, but I don't love it. But I'm gonna read it for Summerween so I can hit the prompts. That's what's important. So some mistakes were made. We decided to make an impromptu trip to the bookstore and bought some stuff, more stuff than I was expecting to. Let me take you quickly through what I got. First, I have The Siren by Catherine St. John. I have heard really good things about The Lion's Den, their other book. Olivia Read the Latte actually is the one who recommended that. She described it as rich people drama, which I'm always down for. And this is about a film that is set on a cruise ship in the Caribbean, and then women have drama between each other, and then there's a hurricane brewing. It just sounds so good, and I love this cover, and the spine is very good, so I'm excited to read this. Next, I have A Song for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. I wasn't planning on buying this, but I also didn't realize it was out yet. And I got really excited about it. It's also tiny. It's like 130 pages. And because I just finished Down on the Sticks and Bones yesterday, and it was even longer than this, I was just really in the mood for like having something I could knock out in one go. And also it's Becky Chambers, who I love, and also this cover is great. It was a little expensive, but you know, supporting authors. That's what I tell myself. Next, I have The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams. This is a Dirk Gently book, and the cover I am just in love with. There's just something about it that really speaks to me. I've read one other Dirk Gently, but I really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to see another one. They're very bizarre and absurd, but sometimes that's what you're in the mood for. Also, the TV show on Netflix, the Dirk Gently show, is so good. I would highly recommend that adaptation. And I know it has totally different stories from what are in the books. It's just that Dirk Gently is a character. But I think reading one after having seen the TV show, it'll be fun to picture the characters. Next, I have the Dune graphic novel. You may have heard me say that I don't enjoy graphic novels, and that is true. But I also want to read Dune, or I want to have said that I have read Dune. And this is the perfect compromise, because instead of being a million-page book, it's still big for a graphic novel, but this is something that I will actually be able to get through. What is Dune about? No idea. But I have to know because the nerds like it and I want to be one of them. And the final book that I bought is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It's just really pretty and it was on sale. It's also quite large. I didn't realize quite how large it was, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. Even from non-bookish friends who have read this and really enjoyed it. I think I have an ego when I hear of a friend who has read a book that I haven't read and they're not like a big reader, then I get competitive and I have to read that book. It's what happened with Darker Shade of Magic, and it's happening again now. A haul happened. Oops. How's reading going, you ask? It's going okay. I got to the 50% mark in Southern Book Club and it's fine. I just wish the pace would pick up a bit more. Everything that I'm reading is good. I'm just done with it. I don't know. It's very strange. And it has also become a nap book. A nap book is never a good sign. It doesn't necessarily mean that the book is bad, but it means that I am not enjoying it enough to stay awake. It's so strange because objectively I know that it's good and I am enjoying it. Something's off and I wish I knew what it was. So it's the next day. I didn't update you yesterday, that was my bad, but at least I have some updates today. First of all being that I finally finished Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and I have very complicated feelings on it. I think that this book is objectively good. I think that it has really good writing and really interesting commentary, and there's some spooky stuff in it. Even if it didn't really hit me in the same way, I think that's a me thing and not the book thing. But my problem with it was, first of all, that it was really slow. The book covers 8 years and the action doesn't really get going until the end. There are a lot of false starts, like something's gonna happen and then we don't do anything, and then something happens and we don't, which I think was intentional. I view this whole thing as a metaphor for how bad men get away with things, and sometimes, yeah, that does take place over 8 years, but that's a frustrating thing to read about when you keep getting the promise of something and then the book doesn't deliver. My other big problem with it was I don't think there was a reason for this to be a book about vampires. Partially because the horror didn't really get me and it was mostly about the social commentary, but there's a part where the main character is trying to convince everyone that this dude is bad, and she's like, no one's gonna believe me if I say he's a vampire. I'm gonna say that he's abusing kids. And like, there was no reason that couldn't have been the case. If this guy hadn't been a vampire and was just like a serial abuser, the story would have ended up being very similar. I feel like the vampire bit was more in name than in story, and like a hook to get people in. I think it was really well written. I want to pick up another Grady Hendrix because I think there's a lot of really good stuff there, but I'm gonna end up giving this one 3 stars, which I'm sad about. I'm trying to talk myself into giving it a 4, but I think it has to be a 3. I would still recommend it though, especially because horror is so objective. You might get something else out of it, and I think it was just a really good book. I think if Grady Hendrix just wrote literary fiction, he'd be equally good. And then once I finished that, I started Good Girl Bad Blood, which is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and so far so good. It's turning out to be a very direct sequel, dealing with all of the fallout from the first book. Like, the first chapter is literally just a play-by-play of the reveals of the last book, which was kind of wild to read, just being like, oh yeah, a lot happens in this book. That's very cool. The only problem is I think maybe I read it too far away from when I read the first one, because there's a lot of like just names that I don't really have attachments to. Like, it's a bunch of kids. They're all essentially the same in my mind. I know the third book is coming out this year, so I'm gonna try to read it closer to now. But yeah, so far so good. I realized I still have one more prompt to hit, which is to read in the dark. I read in the dark every day at bedtime, but I wanted to do something fun. We bought a bunch of glow sticks, and I thought it'd be fun to try to read by those, see how spooky it is. So we're gonna be doing that tonight. It's gonna be fun and hopefully legible, and hopefully like show up on camera. I have no idea how that's gonna go. Oh, this is great. It's honestly not too bad to read from. This is my little setup. So it really depends on which glow stick you have, but here, like, the light is pretty good if you do that. I'm excited. This is very fun. We have arrived at the end of the video. There's still some daylight left, but I'm not going to be able to read anything tonight, and this video is going up tomorrow. So this is all you're getting. Reading in the dark last night was actually really fun. It went pretty well. I didn't do it for super long just because I didn't want to hurt my eyes, but it was fun to do. I'd do it again around actual Halloween time. That'd be fun. I got to 1/3 of the way through Good Girl Bad Blood, and it's fun. I'm finding it a bit strange because this is basically a detective book, which I don't love in thrillers. And I think the first one was too, but I think it had more of learning about Pip and her friends and her family. In this book, it's all just kind of presupposed, so I'm feeling a little disconnected from her. But I think that the investigation is really interesting and the mystery is really interesting, and I'm definitely enjoying it. Tune into my wrap-up to see my final thoughts on it if it goes completely downhill from here. But thank you for joining me. I hope that you had a lovely Summerween. Thanks to Gabby and Olivia for hosting this. I'm definitely planning on participating next time around. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!